another edition of Skyline Columbus. I'm your host, Steve Coach, and today we have with us a special guest, the Community Relations Coordinator of the Franklin County Convention Facilities Authority, Linda Reddy. Linda, welcome to Skyline Columbus.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here. And the reason we have you on the program today is to find out a little bit about the Greater Columbus Convention Center, which I'm certain many people have heard about, but perhaps a lot of people don't know exactly what's happening up there on the north end of the downtown, and that's why we would like to talk with you a bit today.
Good.
I thought I'd start by asking you a little bit about the background of the creation of the convention center.
The background goes back to 1986 with a ballot issue that would have added a 0.5% sales tax to everything in Franklin County, and half of that would have funded a convention center with an arena. The other half would have funded CODA. That went down to defeat, and then in 1987 we tried again. Actually, I wasn't involved at that time, but there was another ballot proposal to this time put a 0.25% sales tax on to fund a convention center and arena. That also went down to defeat. At that time, a number of community leaders, pretty much spearheaded by Mel Dodge, the former director of the president of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, looked at ways to fund a convention center that wouldn't involve a sales tax, because so many people felt that perhaps the voters had not been voting no on a convention center, but had been voting no on the way to fund it. With the cooperation of the Hotel Motel group and with a lot of governmental cooperation, they came up with the idea to fund a convention center with a bed tax, which is a tax put on all the hotel and motel rooms in Franklin County and the city of Columbus. And that's how the building's being paid for.
So it's being paid for by some of the visitors who would actually be using the facility.
That's right, and I'm glad you made that distinction. We feel it's really important for people in Columbus to know that the taxpayers are not paying for this building. No city money, no county money is going into the building. It is being paid for by the users, the people who are coming to the community, leaving their money here and going back home.
What was the motivation behind the convention center? Was there a feeling that there weren't adequate convention facilities in Columbus?
Yes.
This was a market we should get into?
Right. Just about every major city in the United States is either adding to or adding building a new convention center, because that is such a growing industry. Virtually any association that exists, probably many that you and other faculty members here belong to, has a meeting at some time during the year, whether it's a regional meeting or maybe a national meeting. So with that and increasing importance placed on continuing education in various professions, it seemed that a venue for having meetings, conventions, and trade shows was a real good way to bring people to the city, to bring economic prosperity, and to also hopefully bring those people and encourage them to stay for another day or two with tourism. The Ohio Center was completed in 1980, and for the last few years has not been big enough to accommodate all the groups that would like to come to Columbus. So the feeling was that if we built something larger and operated it with the Ohio Center, that we could capture a good share of that market.
How big will a convention center be? How many people will it be able to accommodate?
It's hard to answer how many people, because it depends on what their needs are. But for 1994, we have a National Baptist organization booked in the building that will bring 30,000 people. Now, they will use the entire complex, the Ohio Center and all of its rooms, plus the entire new facility. To give you another range of how large it is, the new building that we're building is 10 acres under roof. You could put 4.5 football fields just inside the exhibit hall. So we're talking a very big space.
In Columbus, you might almost wonder why people didn't want a domed stadium instead of a convention center.
That's obviously been talked about, and those early proposals did include a stadium, well, arena type complex. And obviously, there are still ongoing discussions about putting something perhaps at the penitentiary site or someplace else downtown. We like to see that discussion ongoing, because that could be part of a larger complex that would just kind of captivate all that north end of downtown where we're situated.
That might be a future idea.
Right, right.
What kinds of groups, in addition to the Baptist groups and others, you mentioned that, of course, that's a huge convention.
Right.
You're probably thinking about having smaller groups and maybe groups at the same time using the facility?
Very much so. There isn't anyone that we won't probably try to go after. There are some groups that clearly are bigger, a group that would use McCormick Place in Chicago, for instance, that uses 1 million square feet of exhibit space. We will have slightly over 300,000 square feet of exhibit space with both the existing space in the Ohio Center and our new space. We can't compete for a group that is that big, nor can we compete for groups that would go to, Anaheim or New York City or Chicago, where those are destination cities that people would maybe want to tack a vacation onto. But we certainly can accommodate virtually anything else. When projections were done on what size building we ought to build for a community like ours, it was determined that the exhibit space and meeting rooms that we're going to be building will accommodate 90% of all the conventions that meet in the United States currently, and 85% of the trade shows. Trade shows take more exhibit floor space, so we can't get that extra 5% there. But obviously that's a very large market share. And we can go down, our meeting rooms will go as small as accommodating 50 people. And we'd be happy to take care of a small meeting that wanted to bring in a banquet along with them. And they don't have to use the whole building, nor even the half of the building. You mentioned having several groups concurrently. We can do any combination thereof. The exhibit hall will be able to be divided in half, so that you can theoretically have 2 conventions going simultaneously in the new building, and you could have another complete convention going on in the Ohio Center. One thing that will be somewhat limiting in that regard is hotel space. We do probably need an additional hotel, or maybe even 2 downtown, before we could be utilizing the building to that extent, where we'd have large numbers of people using 3 different spaces in the convention center. But many cities have found that hotel development follows convention center development. It's difficult to put up a hotel when you don't have the people there yet to use it. It's kind of a question of which should you have first. So we're still hopeful that there will be hotel development following rapidly with the convention center.
I know that the process that we've gone through to get to this stage where the center is being worked on at this point has really been extended. And I was wondering if maybe you could tell us a little bit about how the design of the building and some of the approaches taken actually to the construction of the building have been worked out.
Okay. Several things have contributed toward the length of time it's taken to do this project. One of the early ones was, once the Convention Authority was named in August of 1988, they decided rather soon thereafter to hold a design competition to come up with landmark architecture for the building. The decision to do that was based very largely on the fact that Mr. Les Wexner and the Limited Company donated money to fund having a design competition that would encourage entries from all over the world. One of the provisions was that all local architects had to be paired with national architects. And by doing a design competition, we probably added a couple of months to the process, because first we asked for architectural firms from all over the country and internationally to submit credentials. From those, 15 firms were selected to further submit their thoughts on what could best be built in Columbus, and to present those thoughts to a design jury. That then again took another amount of time. From the 15, we scaled it down to 4, who were then asked to actually design the building, create a scale model that would show what the building would look like within the downtown context, and actually draw preliminary plans for it. One of those teams withdrew once they got into it, finding that the press of work didn't allow time to do this competition. And then finally, with the 3 finalist teams, they presented to a jury. They did 2 days of public presentations where anyone in Columbus was invited to come and watch. And we had the designs on display at the Rife Center, the new state office building downtown, I think those were on display for 2 weeks, and community comment was invited. So we feel like people really had a chance to find out what was being built, and also to express their thoughts on it. But that took time. Another thing that entered into the length of time for the process was the decision. At first, we thought we would use what's called fast-track construction, which means that you can actually begin pouring the concrete footers for the building before you've finally designed some of the interior. And That moves quickly, but the downside of that is you don't know your final costs. You're not bidding some of the work until you're partway along, and you can end up over budget very easily. Because this is a project, as we talked, that is funded by a user tax that provides a finite amount of money, we needed to make sure that everything would be within budget. So the decision was made to switch to a standard track construction schedule, and in doing so, that lengthened the time of the process, but more closely assured that we could fit with our $94.9 million budget.
Let you hang on to some of those budgetary decisions
Right.
more carefully.
Right.
Well, perhaps we could look at some of those design features, and you could tell us a little bit about them. We have a videotape, I think, that includes some of this material, and if we could get that rolling, we'll take a look at some of the features. What are we looking at here?
Well, as you can see, we're going over downtown with a computer-generated layout of the downtown showing where the new convention center is situated at the north side. The building, as you can see, has some unusual elements. It's been designed so that it looks like individual building fronts along High Street. The building is 700 feet long along High Street, and so that that doesn't come across as one big long wall, it's articulated a little bit. Here you're entering into, from the connector, coming from the Ohio Center into the new building, down a grand concourse that runs the length of the building. To the right, as we'd be walking along here, is the exhibit hall. To the left are 2 floors of meeting rooms. And each of those clusters of meeting rooms, as you can see on the layout there, those are the things in green. The lighter green color is the large exhibit hall. In pink in the corner is the ballroom, and then the rest of that area is service space, some corridors, and lobby areas. That whole thing is what covers the 10 acres. This is a view into the ballroom, and I think they're showing here how that room can be divided up into sections. Meeting rooms can be also divided so that we can house small groups or large groups. And there you can see a meeting room set up for quite a large number of people. This is walking through the concourse, going, I believe, over to the ballroom. No, to the exhibit hall. And in a minute here, they're going to show you how you can add exhibit space, you can put the exhibit booths up, or leave it as a large space. We could have cars or boats in here with an open space, or you could have a number of smaller exhibits by companies that are set up with like tabletop displays. Well, actually, this is first showing you with some chairs set up.
There's some large open vistas here, obviously, that will accommodate all kinds of possibilities.
Yes, and I was just on the site the other day, and once you're in the spaces, you get a feel for just how large this place is, and we can accommodate large numbers of people, whether it's for a reception or a charity fundraiser function that might be a banquet and a dance, or a convention bringing lots of people.
And what's this?
That's the exhibit hall.
There's
The first one was the ballroom, and here's the exhibit hall. We can, I think we can set up 1,300 of those exhibit booths in the hall.
Oh, all right. Well, that's pretty impressive, especially the amount of space available and the versatility of the space.
The versatility is an important word. They really did try to make this building adaptable to a lot of uses, expandable or compressible, however you needed it. And there are some real interesting features that some of the meeting rooms have, besides walls that will move to subdivide it. They actually have end walls that will open up so that a group could put computers in it for registration and then simply wall it off at night without having to put away the equipment. So you can have open spaces or closed. We think it'll work in a lot of good ways for people.
Well, in your role as a community relations coordinator, what have you been doing, and what kinds of things are you engaging in right now to let people know more about the convention center and what's happening with it?
I'm talking to groups, being on TV whenever possible, so that people in the community do feel like they own a piece of this. Even though they're not paying for it, obviously it's something that they've heard about for a long time. It's certainly very visible if you drive down High Street, and we want people to know what's going on. One of the things I will be involved in is planning the grand opening. What we've found in cities around the country is that many times once a building is open, no one that lives in that city actually uses it. You go to other cities to go to conventions. So we'll do a very large community open house kind of thing as part of the opening. Maybe do an exhibit show of the different organizations and restaurants and attractions that are in Columbus, so that the people who live in this city can come in and really see the building and how it operates, because they may not have other opportunities later. I've also been working a lot with community groups, particularly the neighborhoods that surround the convention center. We're a little bit unique compared to other cities in that although it's an urban setting for the convention center, it's bordered by two very nice neighborhoods, the Italian Village and Victorian Village, that have been worked on so much lately to raise their standards. And those people were concerned about additional traffic, about parking problems in their neighborhoods. And we've tried to be very responsive to those community needs, to say, we think we've solved the problems, we think we have adequate parking, but at least those people have a conduit so that if they do see problems arising once the building is in operation, they know who to go to, and we've already had some good dialogue. We're working with the North Market Authority, which is just directly across the street from us. As that group works on improving the North Market and expanding what they can do, we think that's a nice attraction that will bring conventioneers across the street and to get a look at what's going on in the city. I work with the Hotel and Motel Association. They not only were instrumental in helping fund the building, but obviously their cooperation is very necessary if we're going to house the people who come here, and they profit from having that convention center. So that's an important link. We work also very extensively with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. They work with our marketing staff at the convention center to actually go out and develop the leads on the groups that we can try to attract here. Not only do we have statewide business that will continue to meet in the convention center, that's always been kind of our bread and butter, but we're really looking at a bigger market. We're trying to go after regional and national business that hasn't come to Columbus in the past. So they're needing to really go out and kind of till new soil, and so we work with them to get that going.
There are new contacts to be made in that area.
Absolutely. We've also started doing a quarterly newsletter about progress on the building, and it's sent to people in the community just to keep them aware of our progress, and it's sent to a large number, about 1,200 different associations and meeting planners, so that they know that we're coming online and that they should be thinking about Columbus for future needs, particularly because conventions and trade shows usually book about 3 years in advance. We want to make sure that we're in there thinking for 95, 96, so that we're ahead of the game as far as marketing is concerned.
At this point, do you have a fairly firm idea of when the center will be able to open?
We think it's fairly firmed up, and we're looking at end of '92 into the very beginning of '93. I think we could be looking at 1993 being a full year of operation. And that, although that is a change from some earlier projections, that seems pretty solid, and I think we're pretty comfortable with making that.
The process that we've gone through in order to construct the center and get it put together was in part a formation of the Franklin County Convention Facilities Authority. Could you tell us a little bit about what a Convention Facilities Authority really is and how that operates?
I will. It's a little bit of a unique animal. We were created first by action of the state legislature. They needed to take action to allow for a community to add an additional bed tax to fund a Convention Facilities Authority. That is legislation that was pretty much tailor-made for Columbus. Because
so that wasn't in existence before?
It was not in existence, and that was enacted in spring of 1988, and to my knowledge, no other city in Ohio has taken advantage of that legislation. So that was really the cooperation of the Central Ohio delegation to the Ohio General Assembly that brought that about. Then it took action of the Franklin County Commissioners to create a Convention Facilities Authority. We're a pretty much semi-autonomous governmental body, most similar, I would say, to the Airport Authority or to the Solid Waste Authority. I have appointments both from the county and the city, but we are not really a part of either city or county government. The authority has 11 members who are all volunteer, unpaid members who put in a tremendous amount of time, and 6 of them are named by the county commissioners, 3 are named by the mayor of Columbus, and 2 by the suburban mayors group, so that it is countywide representation. And those people serve 4-year terms and are able to be reappointed should the commissioners or the mayors choose to do that. That group began meeting in August of 1988 and has met at least once a month, but in the early stages, way more often than that ever since, to first of all, to take action to fund the building. They actually had to issue the bonds, and now to oversee the development and the construction on it. It went all the way from coming up with the financing mechanism to acquiring the land and then to hiring the various people who will build and then operate the building.
So the authority really has been the guiding force with this from start through to finish, and then...
Very much so. And they've been a
Yes.
hard-working board that in many cases, have put in some cases, as much time on this volunteer commitment as they did on their own jobs. Thankfully, that's easing out a little bit, but actually the authority will have responsibility for this building for the next 30 years until all the debt is paid on the bonds. So it's a name that you will not see as much of in the future, but you'll certainly still see around.
Mm-hmm. Was the reason for an independent authority of this sort because of the unique funding?
I think so. And generally, in other cities, the convention centers are either owned or operated or both by a government entity. So this was the way that Ohio found and Franklin County found to operate this apart from the city or the county. City and the county have pledged credit backing, most analogous to the cosigner on a mortgage, but not putting in actual money. And therefore, a separate governmental body was deemed the appropriate way to do this.
Mm-hmm. How many people are working right now with the Convention Facilities Authority to make this project function?
I have not taken an actual count. I think we have probably 50 or 60 every day on the construction site. That obviously changes from time to time depending on what's being done. But we have more than 30 companies involved in one form or another in the construction itself. And then on top of that, we'll have the companies that will supply materials, fixtures, furnishings, and equipment for inside the building. We have people who have done financial projection studies, people who have done the financing mechanism, and it kind of goes the gamut. It would be interesting to do a total count. I think that our projections showed that by the time this project is finished, and with the construction in the first 10 years of operation, we'll have 4,700 jobs that will have been responsible at some time for the operations or the construction of the building. So it involves a lot of people in Franklin County and beyond.
And that's not even counting the amount of impact it's going to have in the future in terms of bringing in people.
That's right. An interesting figure to look at, I mentioned that we have a group coming in that will be 30,000 strong. The International Association of Convention and Visitors Bureaus every year does a survey on how much money is generated in a community by each conventioneer or trade show person that comes in. And the figure for 1990 was $157 per day of delegate spending and respending of money. Both the delegate spending the money and his association spending the money to put on the show. Well, if you multiply that by the number of people who come and the number of days they stay here, you get some idea of the economic impact. I think we've estimated $16 million of impact just from that group of Baptists that will be coming.
That one group?
That one group who will be here for 1 week in July of 1994. So it's no wonder that so many cities have wanted to have convention centers. Mm-hmm. It means a lot for their city.
When the convention center meets its full vision, and you are completely booked for a year, how many groups, how many people do you think that will really add up to?
I don't know that I can give you a number on that, because full booking for a convention center could be if we have 52 weeks in a year, and if we had major size groups that used the entire complex, you could have 52 major groups in here and fill the building virtually every day.
That would keep it occupied. Yeah.
Conventions normally take a day to set up. They usually run 3 or 4 days in length and then take a day or 2 days to tear down. So, one group can take up a week's time in the building. But if we get to that point where we have the building filled every day, every amount of space, we'll add to it. And that's one thing we probably should add to the discussion. There is provision for an eventual expansion on this building. The north wall heading up toward Goodale Boulevard has been designed such that the building could be added to on the north side on what will be our north parking lot, and then that wall knocked down in between. Obviously, it wouldn't be without some disruption, but it wouldn't mean closing down the building while it was added to. So I think we've thought ahead so that we can grow as the demand. Let's hope the demand is that great, because we could certainly accommodate it.
Well, it sounds as though there is a lot of anticipation that this is going to be a good success.
I think people are very optimistic. We have some aggressive salespeople out, first of all, trying to make sure that the world at large knows that Columbus is a big city, has a lot of attractions that would make it an attractive convention destination, and they're getting good responses from people. One of the things we really try to push in the advertisements that are in print media for the convention industry, and also in talking to people one-on-one, is that you can get a lot of value for your dollar here. This is a less expensive city to come to for a convention than many other places. Hotel rooms cost less here. Food is less expensive than in some of the other cities. And because we are within 500 miles of 2/3 of the U.S. population, we are really in a good position to attract people from a very large regional market.
Great, great. Well, it sounds like there's a lot on the plate in terms of possibilities and things that are going to be happening with the convention center. And it looks like a pretty successful possibility for the many opportunities that are available through the convention center.
We hope so.
I think that when everyone looks at that kind of opportunity, it's exciting to think about being able to show off Columbus a little bit too, because I believe a lot of people in the community think there are things to see and things to be learned about in the city of Columbus that a lot of people aren't aware of.
And we have found, as we've shown the full video that you saw a portion of, most of the audiences that watch it get real excited about the way it shows off our city. And I think it brings out a real sense of pride in the people who live here that we can compete with the best of them.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Linda. Our
Thank you for
guest has
inviting me.
been Linda Reddy, Community Relations Coordinator of the Convention Facility Authority of Franklin County. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.